There is a detail in the Talmud that almost everyone who studies ancient Judaism knows. Every night, at exactly midnight, a northern wind would come through King David's bedroom window. The wind would catch the strings of the harp that hung above his bed, and the harp would begin to play by itself, and David would wake, and for the rest of the night, until dawn, he would study Torah, compose psalms, speak to God, fill the darkness with devotion. This is documented in Talmud Berachot, chapter 3, folio 4a. It is not a legend. It is a practice so carefully observed that the rabbis recorded the exact time, the exact instrument, the exact direction of the wind. For 3,000 years, this image has defined what a holy man does at midnight. He wakes, he prays, he reaches upward, and the darkness becomes filled with his voice and God's proximity. That is the template. David's template, and it is beautiful. But here is what has never been put directly in front of you. Solomon was David's son. He inherited everything David built. He surpassed his father's wisdom by divine declaration. 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 12. God himself said, "No one has been given what I am giving you, and no one after you will receive it." Solomon inherited David's midnight template, and he discarded it entirely. Not because he was less devout, not because he was less learned, but because he had been given something David never had. And he used it at midnight in a way that no other biblical king, before him, after him, or anywhere in between, ever attempted. It is written down in several places, and tonight I'm going to show you what it says. Let me begin with the hour itself. Because midnight in the ancient world was not simply late, it was not the absence of day. It was a specific temporal threshold with a precise theological architecture. The ancient Hebrew night was divided into 3 watches. The first watch, from sunset to approximately 10 in the evening. The hour of the first deepening of darkness. In rabbinic tradition, this watch belonged primarily to the working animals that lay down and began their rest. An hour of settling, of the world going quiet. The second watch, from roughly 10 in the evening to 2 in the morning. This is the watch of the dogs, the hour when the dogs howl, when the streets empty, when what moves in the darkness begins to move. In Talmud Berachot, chapter 3b, Rabbi Eliezer identifies this watch as the watch when the Shedim walk, when the category of spiritual entities that operate proximate to human life become maximally active. The third watch, from 2 in the morning to dawn, the watch of infants waking and nursing, the watch when wives speak with their husbands, the quiet hour before the world reassembles itself. The exact midpoint between sunset and sunrise, Chatzot in Hebrew, fell in the middle of the second watch. And Chatzot was not merely a clock position. In the Kabbalistic tradition that developed from the ancient Talmudic understanding, Chatzot was the hinge of the night. The exact moment when divine judgment and divine mercy shifted their balance. When the spiritual condition of the world was most in flux, most readable, most charged. David woke at Chatzot to pray. The Talmud says specifically that his harp played at midnight. The Hebrew indicates the precise Chatzot point, and he woke to receive the moment devotionally. He approached the charged hour as one approaches a holy place, with humility, with petition, with music. Solomon approached it as one approaches an enemy's camp at the moment of maximum intelligence opportunity, not to pray, to work. And that distinction is enormous. Now let me show you the earliest evidence, 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 5. At Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. This is Solomon's first appearance in the biblical record as king, and it happens at night. The text is precise. God appears to Solomon in a dream, and the content of that dream is an offer. Ask what you want me to give you. And Solomon asks for a discerning heart. The Hebrew phrase is lev shomea, a listening heart. A heart that can hear what is actually happening rather than what it wishes was happening. Now, most readings of this passage focus on what Solomon asked for. I want you to focus instead on when. It was night, not the morning of his coronation, not midday in the temple court, not in the official throne room. At night. God chose Solomon's night as the venue for this inaugural revelation. and Solomon was awake enough to receive it. This is the first marker. Solomon's relationship to the nocturnal hour was already unique before he built the temple, before he received the ring, before the first demon was ever summoned before him. The night was already his working environment. Now look at 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 33. He spoke of trees from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows from the wall. He also spoke of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. This verse appears in a summary of Solomon's wisdom that is easy to read past. A list of subjects, a demonstration that his knowledge extended across the breadth of creation. But there is a structural pattern underneath it that matters enormously. Solomon catalogued. He did not merely know. He organized, he classified. He built taxonomies, categories, species, distinctions. The cedar down to the hyssop, the lion down to the reptile, from the largest to the smallest, with precision, with sequence. This is the same cognitive architecture that produced what the Testament of Solomon records. Because in the Testament of Solomon, the most comprehensive demonological record in Western tradition, drawing on source material going back to the early centuries of the Common Era, Solomon does not encounter demons randomly. He calls them, one by one, in sequence, and when each one appears, he applies to them the same taxonomic intelligence he applied to plants and animals. What is your name? What is your sign? What do you do? How do you operate? And what? This is the question that appears in every single interrogation. What foils you? What is your counter? What is the angel, the material, the word, the time of day that defeats you? He catalogued them, the same way he catalogued the cedar and the hyssop. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 33, is not a digression about Solomon's natural history interests. It is the intellectual portrait of the man who made the Testament of Solomon possible. The mind that could organize 72 classes of spiritual entity is the same mind that needed only one chapter to move from the cedar to the hyssop. Same method, different domain. Now let me take you to the Testament itself. Charles McCown's critical scholarly edition, published in 1922, drawing on Greek manuscript traditions going back to the early medieval period. This is not a fantasy story, this is a systematic record. The opening chapters describe Solomon receiving the ring from the archangel Michael, a ring bearing the seal that grants authority to interrogate spiritual entities. And what Solomon immediately does with this ring tells you everything about how he understood midnight. He does not use the ring to protect himself. He does not use the ring to cast a general ward over the temple construction site. He summons. Chapter 1, Orneas. Chapter 2, Beelzebul. Chapter 3, the sea entity Onoskelis. Chapter 4, Asmodeus, the king of demons. Chapter 5, Lix Tetrax, the wind demon, and on through 25 chapters of interrogations, each demon called by name, each demon compelled to identify themselves, describe their methods and name what defeats them, each interrogation producing intelligence that Solomon then uses. The specific angel whose name repels this specific entity, the specific material that binds them, the specific formula that removes their operational capacity. It is a clinical operation, an intelligence operation, conducted at night, because that is when the entities he was investigating were active. I want to say something directly here as a scholar. You can receive this text as historical record, as symbolic theology, as mythological elaboration of Solomon's wisdom tradition, or as a psychological framework for confronting the forces that operate in the human unconscious. Any of those readings is legitimate. What is not legitimate, what the text itself does not support, is treating it as random superstition. The Testament of Solomon has a systematic architecture that does not emerge accidentally. Someone constructed it. Someone thought hard about how these entities operated and what defeated them. And the intellectual framework behind that construction is the same framework we see in 1 Kings 4, verse 33. Taxonomy, method, precision. Solomon was not afraid of the second watch. He was prepared for it. Now let me take you to the Talmud, Tractate Gittin, chapter 68, folio B. This is the most extraordinary midnight narrative in the entire rabbinic corpus. Solomon wants to build the temple, But the temple, in Solomon's tradition, could not be built with iron tools. Iron was associated with weapons of war and death, and the place of divine presence could not be constructed with the same metal used to end human lives. But stone has to be cut, and cutting stone without iron seemed impossible. Solomon had learned from his demonological research that there existed an entity called the shamir, a worm so small it could not be seen with the naked eye, yet so powerful it could split stone without metal contact. The shamir was reportedly held by Asmodeus, the king of demons. To build the temple, Solomon needed to capture the king of demons, so he sent his general Benaiah. And here is the part I want you to hold. Benaiah did not go at midday when the light would give him tactical advantage. Benaiah went when Asmodeus could be studied. He observed the demons' habits. He learned Asmodeus's schedule. He found the mountain spring where Asmodeus came to drink, and at what hour and how he would ascend to heaven and when he descended again. He waited for the pattern to repeat enough times that he understood it. Then he plugged the spring with wool and filled it with wine. Asmodeus came to the spring at his usual hour. He saw the wine. He knew it might be a trap, but the spring was where he always came, and wine was what he found there. He drank. He was captured by intelligence, not by force, not by superior spiritual power, by the patient study of his habits, his schedule, and his one predictable vulnerability. Solomon had not attacked Asmodeus. Solomon had studied Asmodeus, and the weapon was knowledge of his opponent's nature. This is why the Talmud records the Asmodeus encounter as a factual account of strategic nocturnal operation, not a miracle, not divine intervention. A man who understood that even the most powerful adversarial force has a predictable mechanism, and a mechanism can be countered. The Quran confirms something about this entire system that the biblical text leaves implicit. Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, verses 81 and 82. And to Suleiman we subjected the wind blowing forcefully, proceeding at his command toward the land which we had blessed. And of the devils were those who dived for him and did work other than that, and we were of them a guardian. And then, in Surah Saba, chapter 34, verse 12, the framing becomes precise. This is our gift, so give or withhold without account. The Quran is explicit about something that matters enormously. The authority given to Suleiman was unique, not a standard prophetic power, not the same gift given to Musa, Isa, or Ibrahim, a specific, singular grant. This is our gift, Hatha Atauna, specified as belonging to this one person and not to the category of prophets generally. Ibn Kathir, in his commentary on these verses, is direct about the implication. After Suleiman, no prophet and no king received this specific authority over the jinn again. The Quran says it plainly, and no one after him. This is not a theological footnote. This is the explanation for what I am about to tell you next. I was 26 years old, first year of research access to the specialist manuscripts room at Source, the room where the reference-only materials lived, where you signed in and out, where the librarian knew which shelf held what you needed. It was winter, exam term. The library kept extended late hours. I had been cross-referencing the McCown critical edition of the Testament of Solomon with the Josephus account of Solomon's night in Gibeon for 3 hours straight. By midnight, I was one of perhaps 3 people still in the building. I had stopped watching the clock, and sometime around midnight, I don't know the exact moment because I had stopped tracking it, the library's night lighting system shifted. It was motion-activated. After extended stillness in the room, the lights dimmed to a maintenance level. I was sitting very still, reading. The room went almost dark. I did not move. I became aware that I was sitting in near darkness, alone in a reading room with the Testament of Solomon open in front of me. A text describing Solomon's interrogation of demons. A text I had been reading for 3 hours. And a thought arrived, with a clarity I still remember. He was not afraid of this. He was studying it, not facing it with courage, not trusting God to protect him from what was on the page. Studying it. The same way a scholar approaches any subject, with method, with precision, with the intention of understanding mechanism. I sat with that thought for a long time without writing anything down. Solomon sat in the dark and studied what moved in the dark. not because the dark held no danger, but because the dark was when the subject of his study was most active. And you do not study what you cannot observe. You study it when it shows itself. Midnight was when the adversary showed itself. Solomon chose to be present. I stayed until 2 in the morning, took no notes, just thought about what it meant to be prepared for the dark rather than protected from it. Those are different orientations. They produce different results. Let me bring you to the center of what I am trying to show you tonight. The question the title asks, what was Solomon doing at midnight that no other biblical king dared to do, has a specific, documentable, textually supported answer. And the answer is not mystical, it is methodological. Every other biblical king at midnight was doing one of two things. They were sleeping, or they were praying. David woke to pray. Jacob wrestled with an angel, but Jacob was the passive party, contending with something that came to him. The prophets received visions at night, but the visions came to them. They were vessels for what arrived. Solomon was neither vessel nor passive recipient. He was the initiating party. He called the entities. He set the agenda. He conducted the interrogation. The contrast with David is not accidental. The Talmudic sources are self-conscious about it. David's midnight practice was vertical, upward, toward God, petition and reception. Solomon's midnight practice moved in the opposite direction, down into the operative layer of reality, where things that prey on sleeping people were actively at work. David's practice produces psalms. Solomon's practice produces manuals. Both are products of midnight. They are completely different kinds of midnight. And I want to state the methodological principle precisely. Solomon did not treat midnight as a time of spiritual danger to be endured until dawn. He treated midnight as intelligence opportunity. What is most active reveals itself most clearly. If you want to understand how something operates, you study it when it operates, not in the abstract, not under controlled conditions, not from a safe distance, in the field. At the hour of operation, Solomon went to the field at midnight, and what he found there, documented in 25 chapters of the Testament, confirmed in Gittin 68, preserved in Quranic tradition, elaborated in the grimoire traditions that claim his authority, is the most comprehensive demonological intelligence record ever assembled, by one man, at 1 hour, night after night. Now let me show you the foiling agents, because this is the element of the Testament that reveals most clearly what Solomon understood about how the adversarial world is constructed. Every demon in the Testament of Solomon, without exception, has a foiling agent. Ornias, the night-wasting spirit, counteracted by the archangel Uriel. Asmodeus, the king of demons, counteracted by the liver and gall of a fish burned in smoke. The Book of Tobit independently records this. Beelzebul, the highest-ranking entity, counteracted by the invocation of the Most High God and specific divine names. Onoskelis, counteracted by fire. The 7 daughters of heaven who cause suffering in the world, each counteracted by an angel bearing a different name. None of them are unconquerable. Every single one has something that defeats them, not a general spiritual defense, a specific counter, an angel's name, a material, a formula, a time of day. Solomon's interrogations were intelligence operations precisely because he understood that general protection is insufficient. You need to know what you're facing, you need to know how it enters, and you need to know the specific thing that defeats it, the thing that is unique to this entity, not a substitute for the real counter. The general prayer says, God, protect me from whatever is out there. The Solomonic method says, name the entity, identify its mechanism, find its specific counter. These are not the same request. One is petition, the other is methodology. And the entire Testament of Solomon is a record of that method applied 72 times. Now I need to tell you something that the Kabbalistic tradition understood, and that represents, I think, the most intellectually honest moment in the entire Solomon transmission. The Safed Kabbalists of the 16th century, the finest systematic minds of the Jewish mystical tradition, built the Tikkun Chatzot, the midnight rite, still practiced today. In Brooklyn and Jerusalem and Lagos and Melbourne, unchanged, continuous. They built it on David's model, not Solomon's. David's Tikkun Chatzot is an act of mourning and longing, Rachel weeping for her children in exile, the divine presence displaced from the world, the human soul in its incompleteness reaching upward at midnight. Beautiful, teachable. Anyone can learn it. Anyone can practice it tonight, with no specialized training, no unique gift, no divine instrument. The Safed Kabbalists chose not to build a tikkun around Solomon's midnight practice. And the reason they chose not to is worth sitting with. They believed, and they were honest enough to say it directly, that Solomon's midnight practice was not transferable. It required the ring, the specific instrument given by the archangel Michael, bearing the divine seal that compelled demons to present themselves to interrogation. It required the divine grant recorded in Surah Saba, the specific singular authority over the jinn that the Quran says was given to Suleiman and would not be given again. It required a level of spiritual authorization that the tradition regarded as having died with him. And so they left Solomon's midnight practice in the historical record, not as a rite to be replicated, as testimony, as evidence of what was possible when a man was equipped with instruments no one else was ever given, and as a set of principles, because the instruments may not be transferable, but the principles are intact. They are in the text. Solomon wrote them down for a reason. Here is what the text gives us. Not a ritual, not a substitution for what only Solomon could do, a method. 3 operations that the Testament of Solomon demonstrates in every interrogation, applied not to summoning demons, but to whatever adversity you are navigating. The first operation: name what you are facing. Solomon's first act with every entity was to ask, "What is your name?" This is not a formality. In the Solomonic system, the name is the identity, and the identity is the operational signature. Ornias is not a generic night spirit. Asmodeus is not a general category of demonic king. Each one has a specific name because each one has a specific nature, a specific mechanism, a specific set of targets. When you face something, a fear that reliably returns at night, a pattern of harm in a relationship, a darkness you carry without understanding its source, and you give it no name, you leave it with the same operational cover that every entity in the Testament of Solomon lost the moment Solomon asked its name. Naming is not surrender. Naming is the first act of study. Solomon did not ask the demons their names because he was curious. He asked because nameless things operate in anonymity. Named things can be examined, and what can be examined can be counted. Take 1 genuine minute. At midnight, if you are practicing the principle properly, or when you wake in the night, or when the darkness arrives at whatever hour it arrives for you, and name what is active, not in the abstract, not in the language of general difficulty, the precise name of the precise thing. That is the first operation. The second operation: identify the mechanism. Every entity in the Testament of Solomon has a specific entry point, a specific vulnerability in the human system that it uses. Ornias enters through the involuntary biological processes of sleep, through the body's most unguarded state. Asmodeus enters through desire and jealousy, the specific human emotion of wanting what cannot be properly held. Each one has a door, a specific door. When you have named what you are facing, ask, how does it enter? Not in the abstract, specifically. Under what conditions does this thing arrive? At what time? After which events? Through which relationships? Accessing which part of you that is currently open? Solomon mapped every door before he attempted any counter, because the counter only needs to address the door that is in use, not all the doors. This one, the third operation, find the foiling agent. Every entity in the Testament of Solomon has one, not a general protection, a specific thing that defeats it. Solomon asked every demon, "What thwarts you?" And every demon answered, because in the Solomonic framework, the counter exists by design. Nothing that operates in the adversarial layer of reality does so without a specific check built into the architecture of the world. The system is not imbalanced. Every darkness has a counter. Find it. This is not passive waiting for deliverance. It is active research. What specifically defeats the thing you have named? In your circumstances, in your resources, in the texts, in your own accumulated experience of what has worked before, even if you did not understand at the time why it worked. Solomon found 72 specific counters. He wrote them down so that the people around him would have access to the intelligence he had gathered. Name it. Find the mechanism. Find the counter. 3 operations. Not ritual. Not magic. Not a substitute for the ring. Method. The methodology of a man who chose midnight as his working window. The Talmud preserves a detail about Solomon's ring that I want to close with. The ring that the Archangel Michael gave Solomon bore on one side a pentagram, the 5-pointed star that became the seal of Solomon, and on the other side, according to later manuscript traditions, the name of the Most High God. 2 elements. The seal, an instrument of authority over the entities. The name, the source from which that authority derived. Solomon could command because he acted under a name greater than his own. He was not the origin of the power. He was the carrier of it. And every midnight, interrogation was conducted, not in Solomon's name, but in the name that the ring carried. This is why the practice died with him. Not because the power disappeared from the world, but because no one else was ever given the specific authorization to carry it in that form. The ring was singular. The authority it channeled was not. And the principle that midnight is an intelligence hour, that what operates in darkness becomes visible in darkness, that the adversary is most active at midnight and therefore most readable at midnight. That principle did not require the ring. It required only the willingness to sit in the dark long enough to study what moves there. Most people flee midnight. Solomon worked it. Most people treat the hour of maximum darkness as the hour of maximum danger, to be endured until dawn with the eyes closed and the prayers sent upward. Solomon understood it as the hour of maximum intelligence. The adversary is active at midnight. Active things can be seen. Active things can be named. Active things have mechanisms. Active things have counters. That is what King Solomon did at midnight that no other biblical king dared to do. Not because the other kings lacked courage, because none of them had been equipped with the instruments to make the study productive, and because the one who had been equipped understood something about darkness that has been quietly passed over for 3,000 years. Midnight is not when the enemy has the advantage. Midnight is when you can finally see what you are dealing with. I have been a scholar for 30 years. I am still sitting with that thought. I first held it in a library at midnight, with the lights dim to almost nothing, and the Testament of Solomon open in front of me. I did not move. I just let the dark stay dark, and I thought, he chose this. He chose to be awake at this hour. He chose the hour of maximum darkness as the hour of maximum work, not despite what lived there, because of it. What you do with that is yours. Sleep well tonight, or don't. But if you stay awake, if you find yourself at some midnight sitting in near darkness with a text or a question open in front of you, and the world has gone quiet around you, and something you have been carrying has become suddenly very present, remember what Solomon understood. You are not in danger. You are in the field. The hour of study has begun, and what is active in the dark is never more visible than right now.